All right. So, episode 2. I I recorded the first episode yesterday, and I felt like recording another one today. I'm not really sure if I'm gonna do this all the time, every day, once a week, but for whatever reason, I thought, let's record another one today. Now, today I actually had something on my mind. A couple of things in mind. A couple of topics that I've heard, a lot about over the last few years. And they have to do with the 4-day work schedule and also the idea of universal basic income. We live in a time right now where it's going to be a huge change in how we live as human beings. Ironically, I think we're coming full circle again. Back in the day, people had very specific skill sets. I build chairs and I make chairs and I sell them, or, whatever it is that you did. And then after that, people just really mostly started working for bigger companies. It sounded like they were doing something for themselves. And now things are changing, and we're going to have to go back to doing like whatever we want to do for ourselves. You can really see the way things are changing right now, even on things like YouTube and media, and everything now is really about yourself. It's not really about working for a company anymore. It's really about branding yourself. You're the thing that you're working for now. Everything's a brand now, right? Now, superficially, that looks really egotistical and really shallow. Like everyone's just talking about their brand. Oh, I'm just promoting my brand. Like it just sounds like, sounds very narcissistic and very shallow, and everything's about me and my brand. But the reality is, that's basically the future. It's just going to basically be about you and your brand. Now, people, 25, 30, 50 years from now might not call it a brand, but essentially we're just going to be working for ourselves. Because what happened was, after the Industrial Revolution, we just started producing so much shit. And most people were working in factories or in companies producing all this shit. But the more and more this stuff will be produced by more intelligent robots, machinery, AI, we're going to lose out on these jobs for human beings. And you know what? That's probably a good thing. So when I say we're going to lose out, I don't really consider it losing out, because I always felt like that time frame was the most mundane time frame for human beings to express themselves. And that leads me back to the 4-day work week. It's hard not, a lot of it really depends on the type of human being you are too. Some people, if you value your self-worth on by how many hours you work a week, I'm just a hard worker. I put in 65 hours a week. I guess it's fine. I guess just keep on working, But the problem is, I think with most human beings, it's not that they necessarily take pride in their work. It's that they're working so they can survive, to pay their rent. And they're just usually pretty mindless jobs that they have no real passion for. And then they work these 5-day work weeks at least. Some people work 6 days a week. And that's just absolutely crazy, the idea of working 5-6 days a week. You really have no time to yourself, to explore yourself, to learn about yourself, to work on your passions, your hobbies, things that actually make you happy. So we live 85 years for what? To just keep working and working and working and working. And then you have like a couple of years when you're old and way past your prime to enjoy retirement. The idea of retirement is nonsense. We should always live in constant retirement from the second we're born. Retirement from bullshit and nonsense. Because the idea of retiring and enjoying your life after retirement when you're free is nonsense. A human life, just by itself, is such a cosmic joke that you have to utilize your time well doing things you enjoy. Otherwise, it's just a fucking waste. What do I mean by the fact that your human life is a cosmic joke time-wise? Well, because a human life, we're either still developing or we're past our prime. And our prime is so short in a human life that it's a fucking joke. I don't think people truly realize that we really only live like at our prime for like 10 years of our entire existence. 10 years. And when I say 10 years, I'm being super fucking generous. I'm being really nice and generous and super positive. Because realistically, probably more like 5 to 7 years. You know? And you say, Tony, what kind of arbitrary number is this? What are you, a fucking scientist? Well, no, because you don't need a fucking scientist to tell you something really obvious. Just look yourself, right? So you're born and you're still developing and you're developing. And when would you say you've like fully developed? Well, they say that the frontal part of your brain, the one that's the front part of the frontal cortex. I don't know. I'm not a fucking brain master here, but there's apparently, I think it's the front part of your brain that only develops until you're about 25. At 25, so that's what. And what is this part? What does this front part of the brain have to do with anything? Well, this front part of the brain has to do with the idea of foresight, the idea of like, when you're younger, how like you do stupid shit, but then you can't help yourself because you just don't have the capabilities to like see, you have no foresight. Kind of like, okay, well, if I take this brick and I throw it through this window, it's going to break, shatter. Maybe someone's in that house and they're going to like get pieces of glass in their eye. You have no foresight. You just do stupid shit without thinking about it. Well, that part of your brain only fully develops at about the age 25, right? Now, when we say age 25, you know what? Maybe it's actually not age 25. Maybe for some it's age 20. And maybe for some it's age 30. But let's just say roughly around the age of 25. Now, why is this ironic? Well, because ironically, that's really when your peak begins. Your peak, if you're being super generous, of a human life is 25 to 35. That's really your optimal peak. Do you know that like basically past the age of 35, every single year, you're really just like a really shittier version of yourself? Now, it doesn't matter how you spin this. You can look at it more positively. Yeah, but I've gained so much wisdom and knowledge. Yeah. No, you have. You've gained a lot of wisdom and knowledge and you live in a horseshit body. Enjoy your wisdom and knowledge. It's like an 85-year-old person who's really wise, but they live in a horseshit body. Wow, that's really useful, isn't it? Hey, look at this really wise person who lives in a horseshit body, can barely get around, forgets 95% of the shit that comes out of their mouth. It's like, did I take my pills this morning? You don't even fucking remember anything because you're a shit version of yourself. Why is that? Well, that's because what happens is the way your DNA reproduces, every single time it reproduces, it's a slightly shittier copy. I don't know if anybody remembers back in the day when they had tapes or reel. Anything that's not digital, because when you make a digital copy, it's identical to the original one. But if you have a tape, like a cassette tape or like any sort of reel, when you make a copy of it, it's never quite as good as the original. There's a bit of quality that's lost. So if you keep making copy after copy, every single copy is a slightly shittier version of the original. That's basically what you're like after the age of 35. Now, ironically, after the age of 35 is usually when almost every single athlete in sports starts declining drastically. You know, the peak of an athlete is usually like around 25 to 35. And I'm being generous by 35. Very few have that big of a peak. Usually I would say it's probably like 25 to 30, like 5 years. You know, I'm a big fan of basketball, and I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of basketball players go through their primes. And honestly, it's usually like from 25 to 30. Some very few players will still stay in their prime up until like 32, 33, 34, 35. But after 35, they're definitely past their prime. No one's still in their prime after 35. I mean, no one. Zero. Out of every single fucking basketball player I've ever watched in my entire life since the 1980s, 90s, late 80s, 90s, and I was a little kid, there's never been a basketball player that was still in their prime past 35. There's such a drastic decline. I've noticed it in myself, you know? I'm 39. Let me tell you, from the time I was 20 to the time I was 35, I fucking looked the same. My skin was the same. I felt the same. And when I reached 35, I swear to fucking God, the decline was supernatural. It's like climbing up that mountain is so slow and it's like whatever. And then when you reach 35 and you go downwards on that mountain, Jesus fucking Christ, you just fly down that mountain. I've aged so much from the age of 35 to 39. It's fucking crazy. And every year I'm just a slightly shittier version of myself. So where am I going with all this? The 4-day work week and I'm a slightly shittier version of myself. What is this all about? Well, think about it. Going back to the fact that our life is a fucking cosmic joke. We have 5 to 10 years max to really fully utilize ourselves. And those 5 to 10 years goes by in a second. Literally a second. That's it. That's all you have. You have 5 to 10 years of optimal peak living. Everything before that, you're still developing, and everything after that, you're just a slightly shittier version of yourself every single year. So here we are working 5-6 days a week just for what? For what? To survive? To do what? So what I'm saying is, eventually it's good that we're going to stop doing these mundane factory jobs and jobs we don't like just to pay rent, because we need to find our passion. We need to find the things that we enjoy doing. Because without that, what the fuck are you? You're just a fucking person who works to produce money, to pay rent? What are you? We have such short lives. And you know, when people look at our lives, yeah, well, we live 85 years. That's not that short. Like I said, when we're really at our prime, it's basically nothing. 10 years max. And we should be using that time to follow our passions, things we love. So the shorter the work week is, at least the more time we have to pursue things we actually love. Because since it's such a short fucking life, you might as well spend it doing things you enjoy. When you consider how short a human life is, the idea of doing things you don't enjoy is so fucked up. It's like the most masochistic, self-destructive thing you can possibly imagine. Just doing shit you don't like. I mean, is there anything more fucked up than literally choosing to do shit you don't like? It's insane. It's literally insane to do shit you don't like. Considering how short of a time we have. And I think that in the next 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years, we're going to go back to the idea of like, well, what do you have to give to the world? And that's what you do. You don't work in a mundane factory, mindless job producing fucking toys. What you do is you do something that you're passionate, something that you think you can give the world. Whether you're good at building tables and chairs, whether you're good at creating art, whether you're good, whatever it is, you gotta give that out to the world, because that's the only thing that matters. You work in a mundane job you don't love, you're not giving shit to the world. You're just creating more misery. That's the thing. We live in such a miserable society. Everyone's so super jealous of North American Western civilization, where we're first world. We're first nothing. First world? First world? We're all on antidepressants. Every fucking person in the first world countries, North America, everyone's fucking depressed. Everyone's working shit jobs they don't like, and everyone's fucking depressed. Everyone. And first world? Are you fucking kidding me? The idea that we call these countries I live in Canada. The idea that Canada, it's funny because Canada always gets labeled as the best country in the world to live. If it's not voted number 1, it's usually voted number 2 or 3. Maybe it kind of switches spots between like Switzerland or some fucking place like that, right? But it's a fucking joke, the idea that Canada, Mr. First World Country Canada, would be voted the best place to live. You know why? I'll tell you why. Here's the thing. Calling any fucking country first world that has severe homeless problems, that's fucking nonsense. You can't call yourself a fucking first world country if you have a homeless problem. There's so much homelessness everywhere, it's fucking ridiculous. And I'm not, and it's just like, before, people always had this image of homelessness as, well, some sort of like drug addict guy or some alcoholic. And then you see them when you go downtown, right? You go downtown to like, who the fuck knows what you're doing downtown? And then you see some homeless guy on a sidewalk and you think, wow, I'm downtown and there's a homeless guy. Well, guess what? There's so many fucking homeless people now that they're not just downtown druggy guys who are former alcoholics. Now they're everywhere in suburban places. Like people who have these like cushy suburban lives, who kind of like, they don't really see, it's funny because if you talk to people who live these really cushy suburban lives, they don't like hearing anything negative. They're like, oh, doom and gloom. Well, of course you don't want to hear, because you have a perfect little life, don't you? And you're cozy. But guess what? They're going to have to see some doom and gloom now. You know why? Because those quote unquote, former alcoholics and druggies that are homeless living downtown. Well, guess what? They're in the suburban areas now. So your cushy little suburban life that's safe from that, it's not safe anymore. Because guess what? Now when you go to your outlet malls and all your little outlet stores in the suburban areas, yes, there's homeless people sitting there beside the buildings now, beside the doors. So you can't hide from it anymore. So fuck you to call yourself a first world country. What the fuck kind of first world country has homeless people everywhere? That's not a first world country. That's ridiculous. Homeless people in a first world country, we can't fucking figure out homelessness? You can't be fucking allowed to call yourself a first world country if you have like a severe homelessness problem. That's not possible. But of course we do, because we just do, and we pat ourselves on the back. We're the best. It's nonsense. It's fucking nonsense. And if you think to yourself, well, Tony, what's the solution? I don't know the fucking solution, but I know one thing for sure. You can't fucking call yourself a first world country if you have a severe homelessness problem. That's not possible. That's fucking nonsense. But I know one thing as far as solutions go. Eventually, we're going to have to, hopefully, since technology is going to get better, where we don't have to spend our lives producing these fucking products in factories and stuff, and we can be free to work on our passions, to do things we love. Because that's really the theme of this episode. The idea of being free to work on your passions. Because, like I said, everyone's just working these mundane work weeks just to get by. And It's about time we switch from that. You know, there are countries right now in the world that have 4-day work weeks, and they're doing really well. And the thing is, even psychologically, when you work 5 days in a row, those 2 days that you get off go by so fast, you don't even feel refreshed to start the new week. You just don't. You feel like, what the fuck? I just finally got some time off and now I'm back at it again. So it's so psychologically demoralizing. And that's why everyone's on fucking antidepressants. You know? First world countries, Western lifestyle, and everyone's fucking depressed. Everyone. Every single fucking person's depressed. You want to see people who are actually happy? Well, fucking leave first world countries, I'll tell you that. Especially North American Western lifestyle. I mean, what the hell do you even say? Like I said, our life is so fucking short that I really hope that soon, you know, because you keep hearing that eventually many people will lose their jobs. And that goes back to the two topics I wanted to cover: 4-day work weeks and universal health care. So when people first started suggesting universal, did I say universal health care? What I meant is, what the hell is it called? Universal basic income. Yeah. Basic income, universal basic income. I mean, universal healthcare, that's a given, right? But the basic income idea, when people first started hearing about it, they laughed at it. They're like, what? Give people free money? That's ridiculous. But the reality is, a first world country should be like a fucking paradise. When you think about the idea of like, what's a first world country? With the technology and the resources we have today, first world country should be a paradise. You know, you shouldn't be having 95% of your population depressed on antidepressants, working mundane jobs they don't enjoy. That's fucked up. That's not a first world country. And why is that? Well, because most people are just scared to lose their fucking apartment, their house. So they're just working anything they can find just to pay rent and pay their mortgage. So this idea of having some sort of basic income just to make sure you don't end up on the streets homeless, enough to pay your rent and buy a little bit of food, and then the rest you earn by doing whatever you'd like, by working on things you enjoy, your passions, your hobbies, things that you love to do. And each individual person gets to decide how much more they want to earn, right? Because some people are very happy with just a very basic amount of income. And some people, they're like, oh, I want to buy a Tesla. That's cool. You want to buy a Tesla? Well, then I guess you can, you have to sort of earn on top of that basic income. And if you're driven enough, or you're lucky enough to get paid well for what you enjoy doing, then you can get your Tesla, right? But this universal basic income, more than anything, it helps you psychologically, because like I said, it's just so demoralizing for human beings to work and work and work and work 5 days a week, 6 days a week, get a little bit of time off, and it's barely enough to even really refresh yourself and you're back. Not to mention, these jobs are so mundane most of the time. And if we had more free time and we didn't have to worry about our rent and a bit of food, we could pursue our hobbies and our passions more. Because that's really what it's all about, right? What can I offer this world? You hear that cheesy saying all the time, like, oh, everyone has a special gift. Well, in a way, it's kind of true, right? Everyone that you know has a sort of certain knack for something. Maybe they're good with computers. Maybe they're good at sports. Maybe they're good at drawing. Maybe they're good at designing things, building things. And that's what we should be doing. Things that we have a knack to do. But it's hard for people to do that when they're scared that they're going to end up homeless, and they just, they get any job they can. This is just basically to survive. there's this stat that I heard a while back that in Canada, the average person is $200 away from not being able to pay their rent. I don't think people truly understand how fucked up that is. A first world country, and the average person in Canada is $200 away from not being able to pay their rent. So what does that really mean? Well, just imagine your average person living. And you know how once in a while you have an unexpected thing come up, like, oh shit, my car broke down and it's going to cost $500 to fix. Well, now you're not paying your rent because you only have $200 to spare, right? So as long as the car repair is $200 and less, you're fine. But if it's more than $200, even if it's $210, you can't afford it and you can't pay your rent. That's fucked up. That is so basically it's like the idea of you're living paycheck to paycheck. So instead of giving this arbitrary $200 number, which is kind of insignificant, it sounds nice, but it really doesn't mean much. It's just the idea, the simple fact is most people just simply live paycheck to paycheck. And how do you expect someone to follow what they feel like they're good at, their passions, when they can barely even survive? Because following your passions and your hobbies and your loves, that's something people do like as a luxury, but most people can't afford that luxury. So this universal basic income might give a lot of people that luxury. Not to mention that there's going to be a lot less jobs if it's going to go, if most jobs are going to be done by robots and machinery and AI, naturally, it's going to force people to go back to doing things they're passionate about, which goes back to this idea of branding yourself. How the new generation, a lot of them, that's what they're doing. They realize that their worth is their brand, is themselves. Everyone is really promoting themselves now. They're not promoting the company they work for, or they're simply promoting themselves, which really is changing the whole idea of culture right now, because it's basically eliminating the fascination with famous people, because everyone is slightly famous now, right? So because we all know each other through the internet, through social networks, through YouTube. Everyone has a YouTube channel, everyone has a podcast, everyone has seen, right? So basically everything's about yourself now, that's what everything's turning into. And what happens is when everyone is slightly famous, it eliminates famous people. People always ask, how come there's no more rock stars? Rock stars are dead. Or, well, guess what? Every fucking famous person's dead. Movie stars, they're dead. You're never going to see movie stars anymore. Like the old classic movie stars, like, I don't know, who are the old classic movie stars? I don't know, Mel Gibson, Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, fucking, I don't know, whoever, some fucking, movie star guy, some Hollywood movie star. Those guys are dead. They're gone. Rock stars, like music, they're dead. All of those kind of people are dead. You're never going to see new movie stars. First of all, movies are dead, period. Movies are like a retro legacy idea, That's why most quote-unquote movie stars are doing shows now. They're not even doing movies anymore. Movies are dead. Movies are like a completely legacy idea. But yeah, the idea of like famous people, that's done. We're not in awe, which is great. There was nothing more revolting than the idea of like worshiping fame. That's such a demented thing to worship. Well, that person's famous, so I guess they're amazing, I'm glad that everyone's just going to be like mildly famous, and it's not even going to be called famous. You know how we call people famous now? Hey, that person's famous. That's not even going to be a word. The word famous is a retro legacy word. When we look back, it's like, why did they call certain people famous? That's not even going to be a thing people will understand, because everyone will just know everyone. Everyone's just going to be slightly known, but it won't be known as being famous. It's just that everyone's going to be connected. Everyone's going to be branding themselves, and everyone's going to know each other. And your brand, quote unquote brand, is just what you're good at. You're passionate. You're passionate in what you're good at producing. Because, like I said, these lives we live are so goddamn short. They're a fucking joke. We have 5 to 10 years at a peak to really do something special, because you can always do something special when you're 40, when you're 50, when you're 60, when you're 85. You can do something special till your last breath before you die. You can do something special when you're 5 or when you're 10. But at your optimal level, when you're at your peak, from the time you're like 25 to 35, that's your peak. And it's funny because there's a very substantial difference being at your peak. You ever wonder, like you probably think, well, come on, Tony, this whole peak thing, is it really as important as you think it is? Of course it fucking is. Just look at everybody. So you're probably thinking, yeah, but you just looked at sports. Not everyone's a fucking athlete. Yeah, I get it, Tony. From age 25 to 35, you're at your athletic peak, but that doesn't fucking apply to most people. Most people are not athletes. Well, it fucking applies to everybody. Let me give you another example. Okay, let's just throw athletics out the window, right? You don't want to talk about athletics? That's fine. Let's talk about creativity. Creativity, right? It's not like athletics, creativity. We all like to pride ourselves in our creativity. Well, guess what? Almost every single fucking person who's ever lived, their creative peak was during their optimal years, from 25 to 35. And like I said, those 10 years, maybe instead of being 25 to 35, for some people it might be 20 to 30. Or for some people it might be 19 to 29. But generally that 10-year peak, right? And you're thinking, how does that work with creativity? Well, look back. Okay, do a little research project. Look back at every single creative person who has ever lived and look at their ages when they're producing what people quote their optimal. So let's say musician, right? Look at an artist and look at when they produce their quote unquote greatest pieces of music, right? Almost every artist I've ever listened to, generally speaking, produced their greatest albums from 25 to 35. Or like I said, maybe it's from 20 to 30. But that 10-year gap, that's all you got. And for whatever reason, after that 10-year gap, people are just not the same anymore. For a variety of reasons. And I understand it's very complex. They lose motivation because they become successful. But the idea is, during that time is typically speaking when we have the potential to produce our greatest pieces of art or our greatest anything, right? Because you have to understand, our energy level even drops. Past the age of 35, you produce a substantially less amount of testosterone. So you probably think, who gives a shit, Tony? What are you trying to do, fight people? Well, the thing is, after the age of 35, every year you lose quite a lot of testosterone, right? And you're probably thinking, yeah, so who cares? What are you trying to be an athlete? Well, the testosterone it's not just testosterone. All our hormones, the way we work, our biology. You know how I said that after the age of 35, you're just a slightly shittier version of yourself? That works so deep. So you think, oh, well, see, you can still create great works of art and be really energetic when you're 40 and 45. You can, sure, but it's very unlikely because you just start declining. Your energy level declines. The amount of testosterone you produce declines. And guess what? Testosterone has a huge impact on your energy level, on your vitality, on everything. On fucking everything. And just the way you are when you're younger, right? Because your peak is like this weird mixture of so many things. Because it's almost like your peak is like the mixture of your physical performance peak mixed with your first everythings, right? Because let's say you're a musician or you love music. When you're young and you listen to albums, when you listen to these albums, they have such an effect on you. Your whole body's tingling from head to toe. You're high literally from listening to the music. Hormonally, you have so many hormones inside of you, so many things happening that it's just like, and then when you get older, it just doesn't give you the same reaction. It just doesn't. Your hormones are different. And not to mention, you're a bit more jaded because you've heard it all, right? So it's like that magical. So when you're young and if you're an artist and you write songs, let's say you're an artist and you're a musician. When you first start writing songs, it's like such a high. It's like, I can't believe I fucking wrote a song. You're fucking delirious. It's like you're like high from just the idea of it. I wrote a song, and then you're obsessed with writing another song, and it's such a high you're getting. You're being creative. And you do this for 5-10 years, and then eventually, not only do your hormones drop off, but then the natural progression of like you become more jaded because you've done this for the past 5-10 years. So it's a combination of so many things. Not only are you not at your optimal peak anymore physically because your hormones have declined and you're getting older and your DNA is shit now because every fucking year is like a slightly shittier version of yourself. You keep reproducing yourself, but you're just slightly shittier. And then you're more jaded because you've experienced a lot more things. So it's so much combination of things. That's why we have this short peak period from 25 to 35, or from 20 to 30. And if you look back, so like I said, you're like, oh, Tony, you're just, I don't know about this peak. Look back at when every single person was, when they did the most, their most profound things. It was during that peak. Every artist, basically, if you look at their album collection, was really in their prime at that peak. Sure, there's artists who still make good albums in their 40s and 50s. But they're very rarely as good as the albums they made in their, 20s and early 30s, maybe. They just aren't. Look at every single fucking person who's ever lived. All athletes are at their prime in their 20s and early 30s. All artists every artist is basically in their prime in their 20s and early 30s. All their great classic albums, are written during that time. And you know how always older musicians always say when they're 40 or 50, no, and they write a new album yeah, this is my best work. No, man, it's not. It's for sure not your best work, because we try to convince ourselves yeah, no, this is the best stuff I've ever done. I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. Because it's just not how it works. It makes sense that we produce our best things from the age of 20 to 35, or it makes sense. If you look at our evolution, how we evolve in chemically, hormonally, psychologically, of course it makes sense that that's when we're going to produce our greatest amount of work, right? So that's all we really have, 20 to 30 or 25 to 35. So do we really want to waste that time doing mundane shit like working factory jobs? It'd be nice if we didn't. I understand a lot of people have no choice and they have to work those fucking jobs. And that's why I said this topic is about the idea of universal basic income and the idea of evolving past this. So we're going to have less of these mundane jobs and people can actually pursue their interests and their passions, because we have such a short goddamn fucking time on earth that you might as well do something that you enjoy. Right? Because like I said, what is more fucked up than doing something you don't want to do? Nothing. That is so fucked up. I mean, and the thing is, we don't know how much of ourselves we can really, what our potential is. But at least we got to give it a try. You know what I mean? For example, somebody likes music, they like to write songs. I'm not saying you're going to fucking become Michael Jackson or fucking Prince or, the Beatles, but see what you can do, But you have to have the freedom to be able to do that. You have to have the luxury to be able to do that. And as a first world country, as a quote unquote first world country, that's a kind of country that should give people the luxury and the privilege of being able to do that. First, there's nothing better than first. I mean, look at the first world countries. Do they look as the best they can be? No. There's got to be more ratings, you know? There's got to be more ratings. And like first world country right now, like Canada, I can only speak for Canada because I have experience with Canada because I live here. But I'm going to assume a lot of first world countries are the same. They're not really first world countries. Homelessness, that's insane. The idea that any first world country has homelessness, not to mention a million other things. And like I said, how can it really be first world when everyone's fucking depressed and on antidepressants? Clearly we're doing something wrong, right? How many people do you know that are truly happy? You ever wonder that? How fucked up that is? Just like look at every single person you know. Your friends, your family. How many of them are truly happy? And if they are truly happy, because maybe some people are just like delusionally happy. They're like, oh, everything's fun, because they just ignore the realities of life. Because, you know, it's a strange thing. Whenever you see somebody who's like always happy or always sad, that always weirds me out. Because it's like, I mean, because life is not great and life is not shit. Life is both, right? Life is literally heaven and hell all mixed into one, right? Life is beautiful and life is also incredibly tragic and painful and horrible. It's both. There's ups and downs. So like if somebody's always like, life sucks, everything sucks, it's like, really, man, everything sucks? I'm sure not everything sucks, right? Some things are awesome, some things suck. So the only people I'm really basing it on is people who have like a sort of like a balanced, realistic view of the world. How many of them are truly happy? Because I know there's some people who are like sort of almost delusionally negative and sad and delusionally happy. But somebody who seems like relatively grounded in the idea that there's, you know, there's ups and downs and stuff. How many of them are truly seem like genuinely happy, you know? Because, and even if they are, or even somebody who, like I say, that maybe is like delusionally happy because they're just like la 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 la, they ignore all the negative and just like kind of block it out. You know, the kind of person I'm talking about, the kind of person who's always smiling. They have that, it almost looks like they're super happy, but when you really look in their eyes, it looks like they're like 1 second away from having a mental breakdown, right? Because they're just bottling it up inside, right? Okay, so even somebody who says they're happy, if you ask them, yeah, I'm happy, if you look at them and if you know them well, do you look at them and think, yeah, this person is really really utilizing their potential, right? Because that's the thing. No matter whether you like something or not, we feel like we really want to utilize our potential. Like when you see like a musician like Prince, I mean, that guy clearly fucking utilized his potential, right? When you see the amount of stuff he did, the amount of albums he wrote, how he mastered all these instruments, he can play like every instrument, you think, well, there's a guy who really utilizes potential. How many of us really fully utilize our potential? You know, I don't know how much of my potential. I feel like I'm probably utilizing like 20% of my potential. How much of your potential do you think you're utilizing? You know, because that's what we live, these short lives. And at the end of the day, at least you want to feel like when you're 85 or 90 and almost close to being dead, at least you want to feel like, hey, man, I milked as much out of my potential in this life as I could, you know? But how much do we really? And how much more would we be able to do that if we had something like universal basic income and this idea and this freedom of being able to pursue the things we love? How much happier would people be? And would you really be able to see a substantial difference in how much they've utilized their potential? You know? It's a very iffy subject. And I understand the counter arguments behind that. So don't think I'm just this, this hippie fucking dude was like, let's just give everyone money so we could all be happy and free. No, it's an interesting psychological debate. I'll give the other aspect. Okay, so you have this idea of like, let's just give everybody universal basic income and everyone's warm and cozy and everyone's fine and they're just playing their guitar at home and writing poetry and we're all free to pursue our passions, right? And that's all true and it's all good. But ironically, that can also have a complete reverse effect on what do I want to call this? It could have a reverse effect on I guess developing technology and things like that. Because when you live in a very corporate system, everything's really based on competition. And competition is what really spurs innovation. That's all it is, right? Because innovation really comes from severe competition. It's a very corporate, materialistic, capitalistic sort of mind frame, right? Because capitalism really supports the idea of competition and innovation. And people are obsessed with becoming number one, having the best everything. That's why every year we want the best phone. You know why? Because every year a new fucking phone comes out that's slightly faster and slightly better at this. And that's capitalism. That's competition. It spurs innovation, right? So that is the irony behind this idea of living this comfortable life that's not based on competition. Guess what? You're going to have to get used to your phone not being super fast and super new every year. So you have to be happy with that stuff. That stuff will probably most likely slow down. It will slow down innovation so at the end of the day, it's really just the idea of like what we want and what is the ideal life, right? Because if you have a very materialistic, capitalistic life, it's based on competition and innovation. And in that society, innovation thrives and you have so many new products and everything is constantly improved every year. And then, yes, you're not going to have that type of innovation most likely in a more comfortable, safe, less competitive society. That's really and that just makes sense. So which one is better? Which one's more ideal? Because people say you can't have that. Because if you make people too comfortable and you take away competition and if you take away incentive to destroy the competition, then you have no more innovation. True, most likely. But how much fucking innovation do we need? Like, do computers need to be twice as fast every single year? How much do we need to innovate? Do you know what I mean? And that's really, is there a right answer? Is there a specific answer for that? Probably not, right? Because like with everything's so fucking subjective, right? What's the fucking right answer to anything, right? It's just a different experience. All I can tell you for sure is that we are headed to a different experience. It's going to be, we're living in interesting times. It's always interesting times, but it's just like, because, and another thing, human beings are really, really bad at predicting the future. We're really, really bad at it. So it's anyone's guess what this new future is going to be like with AI and machinery and more advanced robots doing all our mundane jobs, us going on universal basic income and having more freedom to pursue our hobbies, and where this is going to go, where this is going to go. Maybe here's something I thought about, this idea of innovation. And ironically, I've thought about this and it kind of makes me laugh. The way human beings, the way us being super competitive and very capitalistic and how that spurs innovation. I've thought about the idea of, like, what if the next spur of innovation, since like if we're going to all be on universal basic income, but we're not going to be as competitive to dominate the workforce, what if the next evolution in innovation doesn't come from us? What if it comes from AI? Maybe this is our time to step down. Maybe we've reached our peak of innovation as human beings because maybe all we were really meant to do was design AI. And maybe we're just like a shitty version of AI, you know? Maybe that was always the plan of the human being. Now, I know this is not an original thought. It's been said before. It's a very sort of famous idea, but when you think about it, probably is true. You know, our job was probably simply just to create AI. And maybe, you know, once we live these lives where we're just kind of like not working these mundane jobs in factories and we have universal basic income and we're doing little things that we love to do, maybe the innovation will come simply from AI. You know, artificial intelligence will be innovating everything. In fact, I really think that eventually in the future, an AI will probably, now this is going to sound really ridiculous, I understand this, but I think in the future this idea of a president will be gone. We won't have a president. We'll just have like a server that's just like an AI, like just like this computer that's basically this super intelligent AI, right? That calculates every single variable in our society and just kind of like makes the decisions. You know, kind of like, should we build a street that goes from here to here and do this, and it just calculates all the probabilities, sees all the, and I think that in the future, possibly a super intelligent AI will be in charge. Now that sounds very like Black Mirror and dark. If anybody, Black Mirror is a show on Netflix that sort of like plays with futuristic ideas and how our society might change, but that's a very probable outcome, I think. Now I know for a lot of people that might sound really fucking out there. Like, really, man, you think an AI is gonna be the leader of the fucking world or a country? An AI? Like, what are you, fucking insane? But yeah, like a super intelligent AI who can like simulate every probability and give like probably the most reasonable answer to something. Why not? Think about it this way. How much worse can an AI fuck it up than human beings have fucked it up, right? I mean, it's 100% true that human beings fuck it up when we're in power, right? Because the idea is a human being is almost not even capable of handling the power. You know, when you give a human being power, they almost always abuse that power. And if not even abuse it, they just sort of, I don't know, they don't do much with it. You know, they either abuse it or fuck it up, or even if they want to do something with it, there's other people in power that limit their potential to do it. So even if your heart's in a good place and you have a bit of power and you want to, you know, help society, there's probably a lot of other powers that be that limit your potential for doing that. So I say we eliminate people from power and we just have one super intelligent AI making the decisions. Now, can that go bad? Sure, it could. Who knows? Maybe. But I say, since we for sure as human beings fuck it up, our probability of fucking it up when we're in power is like basically 100%. We always fuck it up. So even if this AI fucks it up like 90% of the time, that'll probably be better than people, since we fucking fuck it up 100% of the time, basically. It kind of goes back to the analogy of like people who are against self-driving cars. You know, a lot of times people are like, did you see that? I told you self-driving cars are bad. You see that there was an accident, someone died from a self-driving car. See? That's such a flawed argument. So basically you saw an accident, so you're like, see, I told you self-driving cars are not that good. They're bad. We shouldn't have them. That's such a flawed argument. So basically, like, self-driving cars, even if they were slightly bad. So like human beings, when we drive, we kill, let's say human beings kill 10,000 people a year from car accidents. If all self-driving cars, if all we had on the road were self-driving cars, and instead of 10,000 deaths, we had 9,000 deaths, it's still better, right? So if you see 9,000 accidents caused by self-driving cars, it's still fucking better than 10,000 accidents caused by humans, right? So when you're seeing that one accident, because for the last few years there's been so many self-driving cars, and yes, once in a while you'll see an accident that was apparently caused by the self-driving car, even though a lot of the times it's a lot of other factors. But let's say, yeah, it was the fault of the self-driving car. See, I told you they're bad. Are you serious? So that's like 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 accidents compared to thousands from humans, right? So we just got to get self-driving cars to be even just slightly better than us as drivers, and that's it. It's good. And of course, let's be realistic. Worst case scenario, self-driving cars will probably be at least slightly better than human beings. Best case scenario, they'll be 100,000 times better than human beings, right? So like, how the fuck could you be against self-driving cars? You know, I'm doubtful. See, I told you they're not good. Like, are you serious? It's weird because it's a weird thing, context and understanding situations. Like when you hear, it's like we always react to things without really fully understanding the context or the big picture of the situation. See that self-driving car hit a person. They're a bad idea. Like, what is that? That's nonsense, right? So yes, AI, the future, that's where the future is going to be. So we just got to get AI, this quote unquote leader now. The president is going to be an AI. Obviously, we're not going to call it a president anymore, but it's going to be in charge. So if this AI is even just slightly better than a fucking person, it's better. You know, we're going in the right direction. And my guess is that an AI would probably be way better than a person. I would say worst case scenario, the AI is going to be slightly better than the person, and best case scenario, it's going to be way better. Just like the self-driving cars. It really is just like that. And now people are going to be like, yeah, Tony, but there's a lot of debate over AI. What if AI turns out to be really bad and it takes over the world and realizes that we're a virus and a cancer and it eliminates us? I guess, sure, that's a possibility. But like I said, human beings fuck it up 100% of the times. You know who has been in power since the beginning of time? Human beings. And we fucked it up 100% of the times. Why? How do I know that? Because every fucking civilization that has ever existed eventually fucking crumbled. Every single one. Every empire has crumbled. Why? Because we eventually fuck it up. We just do. That's what we do. We're fuck up machines. And maybe our job was really just to create the next evolution, which is AI. Maybe that really was our ultimate job, to create the next stage of evolution, which is AI. Now, am I saying AI is better than a human being? No, but it's different. You know, it's kind of like AI is not better than a dolphin. It's just fucking different, right? Like, it's kind of like saying, are humans better than dolphins? Well, no, we're just different. AI is just a different stage of evolution, right? You know, that's all it is. But we're clearly headed to a different stage of evolution with our jobs, right? To wrap this up, because it's almost an hour, with our jobs, with how we live our lives, with AI, we're literally heading to a new stage of evolution. And I'm not saying the future is going to be better or worse, but it's going to be different. That's all evolution is. People always argue about, oh, I wish I lived back in the, this era, because it was so awesome. There's no awesome era and a bad era. They're just all different, right? So that's all it is. So we're definitely headed to a new era, and it's going to be interesting to see, because I think things will probably drastically change within the next 10, 20, 30 years, and I'll end it with that, because it's been an hour and I did it. I got my second episode out of the way, and what can I say? If anyone listened to this all the way through, again, I congratulate you. I think that's awesome. The idea of anyone actually listening to this blows my mind. Now, I completely understand, like I said before, there's so many podcasts, so many shows. I have no idea why anybody would see this podcast like in their podcast app and be like, yeah, let me try listening to this. I really see no motivation to do it. But if for whatever reason someone listened to this all the way through, that amazes me. Even if one person did it, that would blow my fucking mind, because that's crazy to think about it. But like I said, I do these for myself because it's almost like a self-therapy for me to just talk and get my thoughts out. And if anyone else ever listens to it and they get anything out of it, that's pretty awesome. And if not, that's cool too. But that's enough for this episode, and I will see you in the next episode. So take care, guys. Bye.